And welcome back one more time to Culture Crossroads. It is time for our Faith Focus segment. In the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6, God is instructing his people to teach their children. To teach them when they wake up, teach them when they go down. And what are they supposed to teach them? Well, yes, teaching them the things of God. But here's what's interesting. God did not say, and nowhere in Scripture do we really see, send your kids to the government-sponsored school and make sure that they take care of them. While you let them be latchkeys and make sure you go out and be you're overworked and underpaid and all this kind of thing, but make sure that your kids belong to the state. After all, it's the state that controls things. I don't remember reading that in Scripture. Do you? No, the responsibility for raising our kids has always been the responsibility of the parents. And the sovereignty of the family, the biblical institution of the family, has been under attack for decades in this country, and it is one of the key weapons that is being used by progressives and many on the left, and quite frankly, some on the right, let's be honest, to bring down the freedom that we have in this country and turn it into I don't even know what. At any rate, we talk about these things on the program, and we also want to bring solutions. Joining me today in this segment is Tiffany Boyd. She's the founder of Free Your Children, freeyourchildren.com. She's a former tenured public school teacher, so she has been in the belly of the beast. And she's an education consultant, a speaker, podcast host. She's done advocacy work. She's been featured Daily Wire, Liberty Sentinel, WorldNet, Christian Post, and a guest on many shows and podcasts, and giving us a little bit of her time today. Tiffany, thank you. You're also the author of the Free Act of Tennessee, which we're going to talk about here in just a moment. But again, thank you for giving us a few minutes of your time today.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Well, now, you authored the Free Act in Tennessee, and we're going to start with this, and then I want to kind of go backwards, and you'll walk us through the history of what it took to get there. A lot of us sitting here, regular, us regular Joes, and I know you're regular Joe too. That's a badge of honor, but we don't know where to start. We have ideas. We know we want our representatives to do things that we want them to do. That's why we elected them. But it seems like we're the ones that have to come up with the legislation, because left to their own devices, they won't do it. Most of us don't know where to start or what it takes or how long it takes and the sacrifice involved. And so I want people to hear your story in that. But first, I just want to paint a picture of what the Free Act is. And so you can, from the Tennessee General Assembly, all right, from an HB 0552 is the bill. Effectively, it creates a separate and distinct type of homeschool through which parents and legal guardians, this is the official version, may elect to educate their child at home without having to comply with requirements set by this state being Tennessee, for other schools, including attendance and certain testing of required schools. So in broad sense, it gets the state completely out of homeschool. It is an avenue that parents can choose to educate their children however they want to. And I am all for this. My wife and I, we have 5 kids. We homeschool all of them. I was on the homeschool bandwagon long before. I'm so far on the homeschooling side where, I mean, if the parent wants to homeschool the child and, all they learn is, basket weaving, well, that's up to the parent to decide. It's the parent's responsibility. And the consequences then should be theirs to carry and theirs alone. However, the state doesn't like that. They want to be in our business, all up in our underpants, telling us what to do, how to do it, to the degree where we know we've seen the state-sponsored kidnapping of our children through the trans agenda and other things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Take us back to your original impetus for wanting to write the Free Act and begin to push for that legislation. What were some of the things that motivated you to step into that ring in the first place?
Well, it was a process, I'll tell you that, and I can't take credit for solely drafting the Free Act. It was a compilation of a group of like-minded moms and dads. And what we did was we realized in the state of Tennessee that we do not have true educational freedom. And we have seen legislation coming down the road in Tennessee that usurp parental rights for quite some time. So we knew we were going to have to create some type of carve out to keep our families safe and to be able to educate our children from a biblical worldview. That was our position, because Free Your Children is a ministry. The ministry is nationwide. And so we knew we were seeing, during this time, we had Penny Schwinn as our then education commissioner in the state of Tennessee before she was appointed by President Trump. And she tried to institute the well-being child checks in our area. So we knew we had issues with protecting our rights as parents and protecting our constitutional rights. And we knew that there would be a reach eventually, because we're seeing it, as you said, parental rights are under attack all across the nation. So we felt like we needed to do something. We had originally considered filing or trying to write a House Joint Resolution, but we knew that trying to change the Constitution would take years, at least 6 years, if we were successful in making that happen. And we wanted to be really cautious with the language that we selected if we chose to do that. We met with a Republican representative to discuss with him if he would be willing to carry the House Joint Resolution. And we found out really quickly that even many of our Republican legislators didn't really believe that parents know best, even though that's what they claim. And so we left that meeting with him, knowing that even if we decided to go the route of a constitutional amendment, that we would not want him to carry it for us, because he made it clear to us that it would be dangerous for the state of Tennessee if they were granted true educational autonomy. So we knew we were going to have a fight on hands. So this group of collective parents, we all got together and we decided, what's the best course of action to take? So we decided to draft the FREE Act, which is exactly what we did. And the goal, as you mentioned, was to give parents in Tennessee true educational autonomy. Well, when we did it, we did not realize that we were essentially making history. We were just doing what we felt like the Lord had led us to do. I made the mistake several years ago when I founded For Your Children. I said, here I am, God, use me. And now I'm like, okay, God, be careful what you ask for, right? Because he has used me abundantly. And I say that he doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. And so this is definitely a walk of faith for me. And he has made sure that he has provided what we have needed every step of the way. So we are truly walking in faith, because we knew that we were under insurmountable odds almost with this piece of legislation. But when we were drafting it, I said to the team, I said, we need to look at this, and we need to understand that even if the bill doesn't pass, we still have not lost. Because for me, a larger goal with this, of course, we wanted to get the legislation passed because we knew the state of Tennessee needed this FREE Act. But I also said, if it fails, and I know we'll talk about why we suspected it would likely fail this legislative session, but if it fails, we will have then identified those Republican legislators who truly do not believe in freedom. And I felt like that was really important, because we don't need legislators that are masquerading as conservative or legislators that are masquerading as constitutionalists when they, in fact, do not really believe that parents should have the ability to educate their children as they see fit. And they also seem to not believe that it is our God-given right, because God gave us those children. So
let me ask you this. Why do you think, obviously you can speak for Tennessee, you're directly there, but I do think there's something in the water across the board when it comes to America. But why do you think the state wants so much access and control over our kids? This is a specific targeted effort.
Yes.
And they don't give up that power and control very easily. Why do you think they want it?
I believe that there is a push for the globalization of education. I believe that they have an agenda. I believe that their goal is control, that their desire is to create a global workforce. And what better way to do that than through the nation's children? I believe that they will dismantle, effectively eliminate our 2A rights because of the medicalization of schools that we see happening. They are diagnosing children at alarming rates, and eventually, it won't take long. In a few years, no one, when these children grow up, they will not be able to purchase a firearm. And it's easy to control a population when the population cannot defend itself. So I truly believe that this is a march toward globalism, the New World Order, and I believe that, and all of this has been substantiated in the UNESCO writings. You can just look it up. It's there for anyone to read if they choose to do so. A lot of people, like to claim it's conspiracy theory, but they're not even hiding, their intentions. Charlotte Iserbyt warned about this in the 80s, about the Polytechnical scheme that was going to come into the schools across the nation to train children for the global workforce. And we see that happening right now. And we see our Republican legislators really doubling down and supporting these workforce innovation acts and these initiatives that are going to do just that. And so I believe that it is a huge agenda. And then you take a little group of normal people, like you mentioned earlier, that are pushing back against this. We have received an enormous amount of censorship. For me personally and for Free Your Children at large, the majority of that censorship has come from Republicans.
All right, let's drill down on that for just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
We vote, you do, as do I, we vote conservatively. And I say that because we know now there's a distinction between Republicans and conservatives for sure. But it was the Republicans, a good handful, 5 or 6 of them, that betrayed this bill and betrayed freedom. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that.
It was actually all the Republicans on that committee that voted down the FREE Act. And we knew it was going to happen because we had already heard rumblings. We had spent an enormous amount of time, much to their dismay, I'm certain, at the Capitol, going in and attempting to have conversations with our representatives and with our senators about this bill. Several of them wouldn't even entertain having a discussion about the bill. Others we knew likely would not vote in favor of it. However, they did allow us to come in and at least participate in a civil discussion, civil discourse, as you may. But for many of them, they would not. They ran from us, essentially. I mean, we would run them down, getting on and off elevators to hand them literature about the bill and ask for their support. But I fully believe that here in Tennessee and in other states as well, because again, I'm connected to people who do what I do in their own respective state all across the nation. So this is like an epidemic that we're seeing. Our legislators at large seem to be controlled by lobbyists and by organizations who have an agenda, and that's who they're listening to. They're not listening to their constituents. And that was definitely what we saw happening in Tennessee. So the Republican representatives who voted this down, because it was killed in the House committee, the House Education Subcommittee, we knew that those particular representatives had voted in favor of our governor's Education Freedom Scholarship Act bill, which was school choice legislation in Tennessee. And the sponsors of our bill, of the FREE Act, Senator Bowling on the Senate side and Representative Todd Warner on the House of Representatives side, had stood in opposition of the governor's Education Freedom Scholarship Act. And because of that, we knew early on that they were going to attempt to kill any bills that those representatives had written. They had already received an enormous amount of backlash. They'd lost committee appointments. They, as I said, had been told that none of their bills would see the light of day this legislative session because they went against the governor's pet project, which was getting school choice passed in the state of Tennessee. So we knew this going in. Of course, they used a lot of propaganda from the Coalition for Responsible Home Education as a reason to kill this particular piece of legislation. That is a very left-leaning organization that hates the Christian community at large, or so it seems. I've written a piece about them. I have traveled around and done seminars explaining, what was behind the killing of the FREE Act and why people across the nation need to know what happened here in Tennessee, because that group, the Coalition for Responsible Home Education, they are actually lobbying across the nation and encouraging legislators to increase regulation on homeschooling. And not just that, they are also infiltrating the public schools with their ideologies as well.
Take us through, we don't have time to go to the whole thing, but a couple of minutes. What are the bullet points of how a bill progresses? You talked about how you got with the group and authored the FREE Act, but what are the steps of getting that even as far as it went?
Well, I will tell you what it's supposed to be, but most oftentimes they don't follow their own political processes, which is exactly what we saw here in the state.
Somehow I'm not surprised to hear that.
Yes. Yeah, it's always a lot of political gymnastics and unethical behaviors that we see happen in Tennessee, which is sad. And I know it's not just exclusive to our state, because again, I've watched this play out all across the nation. But what we did was we sat down, we drafted the bill as a group, because again, I wasn't the only person that worked on this bill, and many people within the Free Your Children Network gave a lot of time, gave up their life to make sure, we had what we needed to cover all of our bases. So what we did, well, first we started speaking with different senators and different representatives that we felt like were constitutional minded, were freedom minded, were friendly to homeschooling, and really understood that it is a constitutional right, and that also understood that it's a God-given right to educate and raise our children as we see fit. So that was really important to us. So we went to those representatives and the senator and the representative, asked them if they would be willing to even entertain the idea of carrying the bill. Of course, we had already built relationships with these individuals prior legislative sessions. And that's one thing that I will encourage your viewers to do, is to start building relationships with representatives. If you live in an area where you cannot feasibly travel to the Capitol because you live too far away, like in Tennessee, some people live 6-8 hours away from the Capitol. It's not feasible for them to go on a regular basis. However, you still have representatives that are elected to represent you. So call them and make an appointment to see them locally within your area, and tell them what's on your heart. Explain to them what's important to you. They work for you. And I think that representatives, legislators have forgotten that many times. And so I think it's great to have a conversation and tell them what you expect. You are their employer. They are your employee. So I think it's very important that you share with them what you would like to see them do while they're in office, and remind them that you're their constituent and that these are the things that you feel like are important. So build those relationships with your representatives. And then that's the first thing that we did. And then, of course, we chose two to sponsor the bill, one on the House side, one on the Senate side, because you will need one of each. And then when we had the legislation ready to go, we gave it to them. We worked very closely with them, making sure, coming up with a strategy. And a lot of people may not understand that politics, you have to have strategy. So with our strategy that we chose, we wanted the bill to start moving through the Senate first, because we knew we had more support in the Senate and that we would get the most pushback from the House. So we came up with a strategic plan. We gave our senator and our representative talking points, the best ways to represent the bill, statistics that they may need to defend, the points or the positions of the bill. We gave them lots of information so that when they introduced the bill, because when a bill's filed, of course, they both have to file the bill in the House and in the Senate. And then when the bill goes to the first committee, they have to introduce the bill. And so they have to be able to defend and basically sell the bill to the individuals that are sitting on that particular committee. So we gave them what we felt like, or what they felt like they needed to be successful in doing that. And then we watched really closely as things started to unravel in our legislature. So it went to the Senate first, and we felt like, and during this time, we were constantly going to the Capitol. Even before the bill was put on the calendar to be heard in a committee, we would go up to our Capitol 2 to 3 times a week, and we would take literature about the bill, and we would go to the offices of the different legislators that we knew were going to be on the committees where the bill was going to be heard. We would call, we would try to get appointments. If we couldn't get appointments, we would go anyway. We would go by their office. Most often we had to speak to their legislative assistant. We would give them the literature. We would tell them that we hoped that they supported the bill. So again, constantly working, bringing awareness about the bill. Then it went to the Senate Education Committee first, and we felt like we had support. However, the legal for the state, the attorney for the state, Casey Washburn admitted, and you can go back and listen to this, that she had made a clerical error in the bill, but that it would be very easy to correct it with a voice amendment. The chair of that particular committee was not willing to allow the voice amendment to stand, so they rolled the bill, which is exactly what we didn't want to happen, because that would have then kicked it to the House. And we knew that we felt like that this was an attempt to allow it to go to the House and for them to kill the bill. And so our Representative Todd Warner, called me and said, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to roll the bill? Because then it will have to go back to the Senate. And I said, absolutely. And he said, I think that that would be the best course of action. When we talk about strategy again, that's what we had decided to do. So his legislative assistant had written in an email requesting that the bill be rolled out of the House so that it would go back to the Senate side. And they denied him his legislative right to roll the bill. And in the state of Tennessee, you have the right to roll the bill 3 times. And our bill had never been rolled in the House, but they denied him his legislative right to do so. So it was heard in the House, and of course that's where it died, and they killed it. But the interesting aspect of this is, while it was in the House, and I have all of these clips uploaded over on the Free Your Children Rumble page and the YouTube page, so people can go back and listen to this themselves. But there was a juvenile judge that had written a letter. There's a juvenile judges council, and they had written a letter of concern urging the legislators to kill the Free Act. And the chair, Representative William Slater, actually read an excerpt of that judge's letter to the committee prior to them taking the vote, basically urging them to vote no and accusing homeschoolers in the state of Tennessee of abusing their children if this bill were to see the light of day. So so it was, we feel like in the state of Tennessee that homeschool parents have been judged and tried when no crime has been committed. We've been found guilty of sex trafficking our children and abusing our children if this bill would have passed, because that is the propaganda that they were using as a reason to kill this particular bill. So we do plan to run the bill again this next legislative session. So right now I'm traveling across the state. I'm also traveling across the nation to discuss why and how our parental and educational and constitutional rights are under attack. But we are definitely trying to use this time to educate people on what the Free Act is as well, because we plan to run it again next legislative session. And we think that it will be a much better time because it will be an election year. and so hopefully, people will understand and ask themselves, are these the people that you want representing you in the state of Tennessee if these individuals do not truly believe that parents are the most equipped to raise and educate their own children?
Where can people go to find more about you, your work, or even get involved if they want to?
Absolutely. They can come to my website, which is freeyourchildren.com. There are places where you can contact us if you have questions. You can also find us on most all of the social media platforms. We have a free newsletter that everyone can sign up for. Over on the website, there's a tab where you can find where I will be speaking next, upcoming events, my guest appearances. This interview will land there as well, so people can go back and watch it there. You can find us on X, Facebook, Substack. Again, we have the free newsletter. We're on Instagram and Rumble, YouTube. So we're everywhere. We hope people will connect with us. I appreciate the work that you're doing to try to get people aware of what's happening. Education, what's happening in education touches every aspect of our lives.